While some great players have seemingly went to the right teams at the right time, others have definitely gotten the short end of the stick when it comes to teams that drafted them. But what if, for the sake of the hypothetical, that we pretended that these, and only these, 5 superstars were drafted by their hometown teams? What would it look like, and how would it shape the league? In this video, I'm going to do exactly that, while sticking to the closest NHL city that these American and Canadian players were raised in. Hailing from Anaheim Lake, BC, Price has brought his net-minding expertise east to the French city of Montreal. Price, thus far, has had an illustrious career with Montreal, with his best campaign being the season after the lockout of 2014-15, as he finished with an impressive 44 wins, a 1.96 goals against average, and a .933 save percentage. The team, with Price's help, was able to finish first in the Atlantic Division, prior to Price capturing the Vezina, Ted Lindsay, and the Hart, while becoming the first goaltender since Dominik Hasek in '98 to be awarded all 3 for his season's effort. And while the Canadians have never won a cup under Price, the netminder has easily for years been the team's best player. So how would things really look if Montreal didn't have their star player in net? For one, we're going to assume that the Canadians would have kept Jaroslav Halak instead of trading him to the Blues prior to Price's first season as a starter. Secondly, if Price was drafted by the Canucks instead, on the pretense that they had the 5th pick instead, might have substituted for one of 5 netminders to play in Vancouver in his first season? Wow, what a carousel. Anyways, assuming Price was going to be their number 1 guy, it's hard to really know if Luongo would still appeal to Vancouver, as Price was still developing, as Bobby Lou was the starter from the get-go in BC. Following the trade, Price, who is in my opinion the more superior netminder, even though they're both very capable, would have likely succeeded Luongo and would have been the starter during the 2011 Stanley Cup Finals. Thomas against Price. Wow, what a matchup. It's hard to exactly know how things would have played out, but in my opinion, with Price in his prime, Vancouver would have had a better chance and possibly have already won their first Stanley Cup. The Sedins, therefore, would have retired with Stanley Cup rings. Connor McDavid playing for the biggest hockey market in the league. Just imagine how much more attention Toronto would be receiving on a daily basis if one of the greatest players to ever play the game was wearing a Leafs crest. Now, assuming that the Leafs had the 1st overall pick instead of 4th, which was Mitch Marner, McDavid's right-hand man could have naturally been William Nylander, who was selected a year prior, allowing McDavid instead of Marner to play for his hometown team. McDavid, who had a stunted rookie season due to injury hypothetically, wouldn't have been and captured the Calder instead. This would have most likely prevented Matthews from being a Leaf. We'll get to that later, but maybe not Tavares in the Dubas era. As far as Edmonton would fare, Draisaitl, assuming he's still an Oiler, would probably end up captain instead, and be the franchise player, and not overshadowed like he usually always is. From a business perspective, adding a star player to a team that's already getting lots of attention would be great for the league, especially if the Leafs made consistent postseason appearances. And assuming that McDavid was a Leaf, I really believe it's highly possible, even without Matthews hypothetically, that the Leafs would have at least been past the 2nd round by this point in time. No offense. Lastly, also, no offense to John Tavares, but I feel like it's a sure shot that McDavid, who is mature beyond his years, aka youngest captain ever, would be Toronto's captain instead. Possibly the most interesting to ponder is Austin Matthews playing in the desert, as the Yotes have struggled for years to keep their fans in the stands. But if they had a star player beginning in 2016 to garner more attention, maybe they wouldn't be struggling so much with attendance, as Matthews, similarly to Wayne Gretzky, but on a different scale, helped birth a slew of developmental programs in an area that's not known much for hockey. Therefore, if he was playing in an area, presumably, the franchise would rake in more revenue, interest, and possibly better players. For example, the Kessel effect. Kessel gets traded, and even before he plays a single game for the team, ticket sales skyrocket with a 600% increase. An increase in sales would also potentially be paired with an increase in postseason appearances. Assuming Kessel was still traded to Arizona, having him on a line with Matthews would definitely be lethal for any potential team to face. One homecoming that's been desired by many in Montreal is that of number 87, as Crosby not only has roots not far from the Quebec area, but also a simultaneous family connection, as his father Troy was drafted by the Habs in 1984.
My thing is I always wanted to be a goalie. I remember asking my dad to play goalie, and he said, listen, you're probably going to have more fun chasing a puck around than standing and freezing in the net where you're not going to get too many shots. So I think it was the right choice.
Sid, presumably, would help the Habs being their first overall immensely, and knowing that he would take less money as he has over the years, would give the team the opportunity to build a decent one around him. But unfortunately, if they didn't receive Crosby in 2005, I'm going to assume that the Penguins potentially would have relocated in 2007, and therefore not have won the 3 Stanley Cups they have in the past 2 decades. Instead of Carey Price being the franchise player, Crosby would instantly be the star player. And to top it all off, with his previous QMJHL experience and choosing to learn the French language for interviews in junior, would be a natural fit as the captain to represent the team. Sid would be embraced by the city and presumably better the team around him. Malkin would be the captain of the Penguins and their star player, while no longer being overshadowed by Crosby. And I'm going to assume that there would be at least 1 Stanley Cup ring in Sid's collection, and a championship won for the fans since '93. Definitely a player the Sabres could use today, Patrick Kane would make being a Sabres fan a little less miserable, as a winger has often been called the best US-born player to have ever played the game. Kane, as you may know, was a key player in the Blackhawks becoming the best team of the last decade, and the only one to win 3 cups. Having Showtime playing in the United Center has helped revitalize the hockey fan base over the years in Chicago, and jumpstart ticket sales. Drafted 1 year after Taves, Kane, instead of being the franchise player for the Hawks, would be the face of the Sabres today. And considering Kane has had 2 triple-point seasons during the postseason drought timeframe, I think it's a pretty fair statement to say that the club wouldn't be in the same predicament, hypothetically. Tickets wouldn't be dirt cheap, and maybe the whole entire fan base wouldn't be contemplating therapy just for being fans. The Hawks, I'm sure, would have won at least 1 Stanley Cup without Kane, as vital as he was to the team, as they had a roster that was built for success from the get-go, even without number 88. Eichel and Kane, though, 2 playmakers who have amazingly accurate shots in their own right, would definitely be one duo I'm sure opponents wouldn't prefer to face in Buffalo.